Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Senate Update. It has been a minute. How you doing, Lab?
Doing well. Good to be back, Mangry. It's like we had some real life stuff to go through or something. I don't know. But anyways,
Fancy
good to,
that,
good to be
right? Our
here.
life isn't just playing a video game, right?
Yeah,
Um,
adulting
yeah,
is
so
hard.
it is, man. So yeah, it has been a bit since you and I have recorded individually, but there's been a lot of shit going on in the game. So we're going to cover a few things tonight. Full transparency, we had intended on recording tonight anyway, prior to the most recent Road Ahead that came out like yesterday, day before, something like that. So mostly what we're going to focus on tonight is covering some of the most recent GL releases and news that's come out. So we're going to be talking a lot about um, GL Kenobi or Jedi Master Kenobi, as well as Commander Ahsoka Tano. And then we're going to kind of focus mostly on some of the new releases that were recently highlighted in the recent Roadhead. So we're going to be talking a bit about the Executor, as well as Maul and the newest GL, the next DS one, which is going to be Lord Vader. Um, so it's sprinkled in throughout there. We're also going to talk a little bit about Conquest, how we feel like that's shaping up, and specifically the reward structures, the shards, and all that stuff. So, Lab, we got Jedi Master Kenobi, Mister Hello There himself. Yet another version of Kenobi. What do you think of him as like the choice of the next LS GL? I know you and I did a recording a while back on our speculation, and I think the three that we kind of collectively narrowed it down to um, for if they were going to do Clone Wars era, it was either going to be, I think you had suggested Mace, or Kenobi was a possibility, and then I think the other one that I threw out there was Ahsoka also, kind of in that era or a little later. Um, so one out of three was right. What do you think, man? How do you feel about that choice and kind of how they rolled him out, as far as Rex and all that?
Well, I mean, it was pretty obvious it was going to be either Kenobi or Mace to me. It could have been Yoda, I guess. Those those were kind of the three light side possibilities that I saw in my mind. Because the thing about Galactic Legends in this game right now is that they have to be like the pinnacle of recognizability for a very wide uh, part of the player base. So this is the reason
Sure.
why I think Maul wasn't ultimately chosen to be a GL, and why Ahsoka was not ultimately chosen to be a GL is because even though they're both excellent characters and they both have huge parts to play in the Star Wars universe, they're not nearly as recognizable as Lord Vader and General Kenobi. So I'm quite sure that that was the difference maker. That's why we have Jedi Master Kenobi in game now. That's why we're going to have Lord Vader, as pitiful of a galactic legend as he will be. Um, not in relative game strength, but come on, Lord Vader was not the pinnacle of Vader's strength. Vader was. So come
Oh,
on.
yeah. Yeah.
But I
We're,
know that I know why they did it. It's all about recognizability. It's about players wanting to spend money and to advance their rosters to get the best, the most recognizable characters. So I mean, can't really fault them for it. So here we go, Kenobi and Lord Vader.
yeah. Hey, I will say one thing about like just thematically, what they did with these GLs as far as bucking the trend to a degree. One, they didn't release them side by side. Although arguably this is probably one of the cleanest, like, nemesis pairings, if you will. If we're looking at it in that narrow swath of, Revenge of the Sith. But I am happy that they kind of broke that mold of just chronological order of, like whatever the oldest one is, because I think that was always my concern with like Kenobi. I'm like, well, we already have old Ben. They're not gonna do, you know, there is no past that unless they get into Force Ghosts. So I am kind of glad that they are showing that they're gonna have some flexibility with that as far as like the timelines. I do agree on Lord Vader. I don't think that's the pinnacle of his strength. So I mean, like that one probably didn't make sense. But also, I know you and I have talked about like, well, the Vader that we currently have in game is kind of timeless Vader that fits any point in the timeline where he is Darth Vader. So where do you go from there? But that was a bit of designing themselves into a corner, but I was pretty happy with that too, though. With as far as Kenobi goes, recognizable, arguably pinnacle of his overall strength, I'd say. I'm sure you can make arguments for or against that, but I think it's a clean choice. Um,
It's interesting that you brought up the point of Darth Vader because, and we're not going to talk about this at length in this episode. We're probably going to push that back to next episode, but Darth
mhm.
Vader is receiving some serious nerfs, and
Yep.
I mean there are certain reasons that CG gave, and I believe them when they give those reasons. But I think that that's what you just mentioned is possibly another reason, right? Because our current version of Darth Vader in the game is really, really good. Like he could if he had the Galactic Legend unique where he took less damage and got like more stats for relic levels, he would be right up there with all of the other Galactic Legends that we have right now in terms of his kit. He is a monster.
Oh
So
yeah, for sure.
I'm assuming that played a little bit of a part in it too. They're like, okay, we're releasing this new version of Vader, and he's the Galactic Legend version, so he needs to be the strongest one in the game. But Darth Vader is pretty freaking strong right now, so maybe we need to tone him back a little bit. So I think that might have been
It's
kind of like a cherry on top for them as far as this whole balance patch goes.
yeah, and I get that as far as a game. It's still thematically that bothers me though, because
Oh,
like
for sure. But
like
CG doesn't care
angsty,
that
just
much about
converted
thematics.
Sith. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Um, so how do you feel about like some of the character requirements and all of that for good old Mr. Hello there?
Um, well, as far as the
I mean, we
characters,
don't need to go through probably all of them, but
no,
like, as far
no.
as like the highlights, right?
Yeah, I mean, the characters themselves, I thought all pretty much made sense for going after uh, Jedi Master Kenobi. I didn't see anybody who was super out of place there. Like, I mean, we had Grievous.
No.
I, you could argue that Relic 7 Watt was a little bit of an FU, but
Yeah.
considering Kenobi barely interacted with him at all, but whatever. Um, and also that because Watt really has no reason to go past R5, um, just
Right.
because of his kit. But F
Yep.
it, I've got a Relic 7 Watt now, so
Yep.
there we go.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I would say the thing that I was most excited, the single thing that I was most excited about in terms of his requirements was Django to R7. And Django, the reason is because I had Django at G11 for forever. Like I had him up very early in the game for my early on bounty hunter team to, do the credit heist and blah blah blah. But at G11 nowadays at 5 million GP, it barely does anything. He might as well just not be on my roster. But at R7, the dude is a maniac. His kit is so freaking good. He gets all
Oh,
of the
I
right
believe that.
stats for his relic levels. He gets armor. He's got 100% armor penetration. His rocket does a double hit. He reduces max HP. Uh, he keeps people from reviving. Like he is a gangster. So
Yeah.
I was really excited to relic 7 him. I will get to use him in my upcoming in next week's GAC at Relic 7. I'm looking forward to making my opponents cry. Um, but yeah, I mean that's the highlight for me. Everything else was just like, yeah, whatever. Grievous to Relic 7, Shakti to Relic 7. Really what they did with these requirements was they really, really wrung the relic materials out of us. Um, Jedi Master Kenobi requires far more
Are
relic
you kidding?
materials and signal data than any other galactic legend does, and it's not even close. So, like the characters
Yeah.
themselves aren't too bad, but whew, I am
People
relic poor now.
if people thought they had to spend a lot of Carbantes to get JML,
Yeah.
who Kenobi with that. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. As far as the characters that you have to take to relics, sure, there's extra relics levels in there for a lot of those characters that don't need to be there. But I agree overall, and I don't think it was any of the characters, like you said, were surprises or there was the expected amount of waste. Like you have to take Mace
Yep.
to relics.
Yep. Qui-Gon.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, and Qui-Gon and Cody, but at least Cody, you get to use him. There's actually a pretty funny meme I saw about that, whereas Cody's like, well, at least I'm useful in that one TV mission.
Uh,
Um,
but he's not really because nobody's completing that mission unless they're R8ing
fair,
Cody. So
fair.
I guess you get to try
I
it.
haven't tested it because mine is G8 still.
Mm. Mm-mm-mm.
So, and why is he that high? Hyperdrive. That's why.
Oh my
But yeah, but yeah, no, I think there was the expected amount of characters that aren't super useful in there, but I think overall most of the characters were very useful. And for me personally, I know you and I have talked about this a little bit lately. I've been kind of indulging a little bit into the Mandalorian um, characters a little bit. So the fact that we had um, and part of that too was to get Razor Crest, which we'll talk about this a little bit too, is that, like I wanted to build towards this idea that was coming that, it's looking like we were going to get a scoundrel or a bounty hunter capital ship and be able to flesh out that fleet a little bit better.
And lo and
Um,
behold,
Lo and behold, we have that. But, and I think between having to relic Bo-Katan as well as Django and who was it? Cad Bane? Was that the other bounty hunter for Kenobi?
he
You had to
was,
relic.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, as far as like just for me personally, I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. Like, I don't mind doing that because it's kind of you know related or crossing over into some stuff that I was planning on working towards. Not necessarily high relics, but beefing that stuff up anyway. So I'm like, all right, like the long poles in the tent there, for most players, if you're like higher level, are gonna be Bo-Katan, just because you got to farm her, and then Commander Ahsoka Tano, just because you have to farm her up from Conquest, right?
Yep.
So there's definitely some other ones in there too, um, like Watt, so there is a barrier there that if you are not in a guild that is high enough to get that, although they have released some packs where you can buy some shards of him, as well as Negotiator, both of those that basically if you're not getting get to and you're not in a big enough guild that's running Geonosis TBs, it's going to be a challenge to get up to Kenobi. So there's that disclaimer. So this is not Sith Eternal Emperor or even either the original GLs, both Rey and SLK I feel like are much more accessible from a newer or lower GP player.
No
But if you
doubt.
are somebody who is in a more mature guild, you have like a you know 4+ million GP roster, give or take, depending on your leanness and what you focused on. You're gonna have a hard time going after Kenobi if you're not above that threshold. But if you are, you probably have a lot of that stuff already. So those things aren't as much of a concern. So then it just becomes you got to farm a couple things here. Basically Bo-Katan, which no big deal, hard mode or a hard node farm, and then Commander Ahsoka Tano, who is was released through Conquest. So they kind of came out with this plan of, okay, our first three conquests, our shard reward out of the reward boxes was focused around Razor Crest. Then they kind of announced this plan of, okay, it sounds like anyway, I don't know if they specifically mentioned we're going to do this every three conquests, but it seems like that's their cadence where they kind of they shifted Razor Crest down to kind of a secondary reward out of the crate. each of the crates basically. He's still available for purchase at a little bit cheaper of a price for the Conquest currency. So you can still buy him on the same nodes that you could buy Cat on, but they basically released Commander Ahsoka Tano as the new primary. Now we just finished up the third one, third conquest with her. So presumably the next one they'll probably shift her down to the secondary reward in the boxes alongside the new one that they released or they will be releasing, which is Maul. So how do you feel about conquest in general and how that shapes into those requirements and as far as even just like a release mechanism for characters? Do you feel like
Ooh.
they're kind of spacing that out? And that was kind of an ad hoc three questions in one probably, but
Yeah, that's a very broad
yeah,
question. I'll try to
yeah,
keep it succinct. Conquest in general, um, I'm not gonna lie, Conquest itself has been a bit stale lately. I think having 3 conquests in a row with the exact same bosses and the exact same feats and all that stuff, is too much. They need to switch it up more than that. Um, I do think that it's an ingenious way of getting us to engage in their new game mode, that's for sure, because Commander Ahsoka Tano is an extremely powerful character, and I know that she was the singular reason why I got my red box religiously these last 3 conquests, because I did not want
nice.
to not have her. And it was a
Yeah,
good decision. I haven't been able to use her that much yet because I don't have Kenobi and my GAC teams. I still haven't found that perfect use for her yet, and I probably won't. I'll probably just slot her straight into JMK as soon as I get him, um, because I don't have Bando. Yep, because I think he is the other really good use for her right now. But uh, yeah, she's a really powerful character. I'm really excited to use her. And it was smart of CG to release her the way that they did. And I'm also very excited for Maul because if Maul is at the same power level, relatively speaking, then I want him on my roster and I
yeah,
will gear him immediately when I get him unlocked. So, um, very smart of CG. I hope that part of their road of head post was them saying that Conquest was going to receive a shakeup. Um, and a bunch of new stuff was coming and blah, 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 and it was going to be better. So I hope that's true because, like I said, Conquest has been a bit stale for me. I realize that this is from the perspective of someone who prefers PvP to PvE, and so other PvE players may not share that same perspective. But I do hope that the game mode continues to be improved because it's very obvious that they are releasing important characters through it, and so I'm going to have to slog through it one way or another. So.
it is a slog too. So I enjoy Conquest. I do agree that it gets kind of repetitive, and it's just the piece that is tough for me is you can hit. I would say like if you're just being thorough, getting your like each of the sector feats, you're gonna naturally get the event feats just by doing that for the most part. Um, it gets you can get to up to like depending on your roster, assuming you're in hard mode, you can get up to box like 4 or 5 pretty easily without really having to double back much. But getting to 6 and 7, which unless I'm messing up my numbers, basically the second to last and the last boxes is rough because you just have to repetitively grind the same missions over to get stuff like getting a bunch of evasions or doing a bunch of you know damage over time ticks and stuff like that. So that like some of that stuff is just um I think I actually geared up my Jawas finally on my main just so I could survive long enough to apply some thermal detonators. Because I didn't really have any other good characters to do that with, right? So like there's some dumb shit like that that I would like to see, and I agree that it would be nice if they mixed up the feats more often, even if they're not going to mix up the bosses super often, which they are with the next one. They said that they're mixing up the bosses on each of the sectors, which is good. And refresh my memory, lab. Did they do that? I know the ones where it was just Razor Crest were kind of like a trial run anyway, but did they mix up the bosses a little bit from that set to our most recent set that had Cat in
Yes.
it?
Yes, the
Okay,
bosses are
that's what I
mixed up.
thought.
The feats were not. We've had the same feat
Yeah,
list for the last 6 conquests, and it's been wretched. And you were exactly right.
yeah,
You touched on the problem is that the feats are too repetitive. Like, I don't mind being pushed and like having them demand certain things from my roster, like thermal detonators, for instance. I enjoy, well, I shouldn't say I enjoy. I don't mind coming up with creative ways to get those feats. What I do mind is sitting there on the same sector trying to get 100 evasions and doing like eight otherwise meaningless battles. Like, give me
right.
a bigger feat list and make the feats attainable in 1 or 2 battles, please. Please, CG.
Yeah,
I'm begging you.
exactly. Because it reaches a point where like you're either not capable of doing it because you don't have the right characters to do it, or you have the right ones. It's just a matter of time of if you have the time to dedicate to Conquest in those 2 weeks to get it done. And like you said, it's mind numbing. And I agree with you. Like I appreciate the feats because it, along with being coupled with the data discs, because it can allow you to use your roster in ways that you wouldn't have otherwise and do some really dumb shit. Like having what is it, zealous ambition on a support or a healer, and all of a sudden you're one-shotting things with shock T. It's crazy shit, but it's cool. So I appreciate that stuff. I think if they can mix it up a little bit more for going forward, or like you said, even if they're not going to mix up the feats, give us more options for the feats. So that way we can, not want to bash our head against the wall to get those higher end boxes where it really does jump up. So I think the second to last box you get 65 Commander Ahsoka Tano. Presumably it'll be the same for Maul, but we don't know that yet. The last box you get 90. So there's a big jump there. So we'll see. We'll see what they do when they said they do need a little bit more time. There'll be a little bit more gap between the next conquest before they drop Maul because they need to tweak some things and test it. But then I think they said basically they're gonna release the next set of 3 a little bit closer together so that ultimately in the long term we're still gonna get the same amount of conquests in the next 3 month period. It just might be a little bit before we get the next one. To allow them to tweak stuff and test stuff. So, which is fine.
One last thing, very important thing that we must talk about regarding Conquest before we move on is part of the changes that they already did announce, and this is extremely exciting to me, um, and I'll tell you why in a minute, but the change that they announced was that the cost of switching disks is no longer going to be tied to the
Oh,
Conquest
I did see that.
currency, but it is going to be costing the actual
Yeah,
energy,
energy,
which is
which is great.
great because I
Yeah,
don't mind. Like, here's the thing, okay? The way that I run Conquest, I run it on the knife's edge. I try not to refresh at all, because
right.
that's just the kind of player that I am.
Sure.
Uh, and like the two conquests ago, I got it with no refreshes. This past conquest, I had to refresh once. So I'm very frugal on that end, but I don't mind spending an extra refresh over the course of a conquest in order to be able to swap my discs much more freely. I
Yeah,
felt like I could not do that at all these last few conquests because conquest currency is so precious.
yeah.
Because if
It's the
you
new
want,
get to.
yeah, well, yeah, because if you want to get those new characters, you have to have, a bank of it before
Yeah,
before the first conquest starts. Otherwise, you can't swap discs at all, or else you can't buy enough shards to be able to unlock them on the third conquest. It was ridiculous.
yeah,
So I'm extremely glad that they made this change. It will allow me to mix and match my data disks much, much more often because that was the other thing. I felt like I didn't want to put on a certain data disk to get a feat because then I would have to take it right back off again to get a different feat because it would be working against me in that feat. So,
Yep.
anyways, I won't belabor this point, but super glad that they're making this change, and hopefully the other changes they make will be positive as well.
Yeah, and just to to kind of wrap up the piece about like release cadence and stuff like that. So presumably, I don't know if they've directly confirmed this, but my understanding is basically how they're going to roll these out going forward is now Commander Ahsoka will shift to that secondary reward slot. Maul will be in the primary. That's your understanding too, right? And then
Yes.
I think they said Razor Crest is going to get rolled off, and then in the future they're going to do they hadn't decided yet. Basically, it might be basically just uh, a journey guide event. It could be something else, some other sort of event to allow you to continue to earn those down the line. It sounded like they do have a little bit of a plan to actually signify the kind of the level of that character and give it like a dedicated event down the line to reintroduce it into the ecosystem, rather than just throwing it on a hard mode, which is kind of neat. And I do think that overall that if you're somebody like Lab who is getting that last box, you're buying the 20 shards or whatever it is that you can buy each time, in the conquest from the scavenger. Um, you're gonna get that character 7 stars in 3 months or 3 conquests essentially, which is, if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, I do appreciate that cadence, for a character of that power level. Just because if you look at something like Watt, or for example, who's a very important character, but it'll take you forever to unlock him, because like best case scenario, you're talking what, like 7 months if you're in a guild that's landing, you know, 50 every time, to 7 stars anyway. So, and that's not the reality of most guilds either. Most guilds are not bringing home 50 shards every time. So, I do appreciate that they're bringing out characters like that a little bit more regularly, even if it's, or a little quicker to 7 star, even if it's like, to basically force the new game mode down your throat, whether you like it or not. And I do like it better than some of the other stuff that they've released, as long as they continue to freshen it up a bit. But, all right. So we talked a little bit about Conquest and how they're rolling out, GL Kenobi. How do you feel about, actually? I know you actually have, Ahsoka Tano. I know you talked a little bit about that. You're chasing Kenobi. I'm probably going to do the same eventually. I'm way far off from that. But I'm kind of sorting out all the shards and everything like that and getting that squared away before I start gearing anything. How do you feel about how you're hearing, Kenobi is being used, and as well as, Commander Ahsoka Tano? I know I saw a pretty bonkers video that, Zoro shared with me with, Ahsoka doing tons of damage in, HSTR. But how are you feeling about what you're hearing about, Kenobi's power level and use and all that stuff?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not just what I'm hearing. I'm experiencing it too, just on the wrong end right now. Um,
Fair.
it's kind of like the Taco Bell of GL abuse. But anyways, JMK is
Taco
absolutely
Bell of GL abuse. I like it.
JMK is absolutely the next level of power creep, guys. He is with his full complement of characters, and I'm including Cat in here. He is better than the other GLs in terms of Squad Arena, in terms of GAC, the two PvP areas that I dearly care about. So, um, I have a guildmate who has a squad payout an hour before me, and I cannot beat his JMK team with Cat in it. I have to ask him to remove mods in order for me to take first place from him. JML is up to the task, but you need Relic Jolie in there from what I've from my testing and from what I've heard and seen from other people. And I do not have Relic Jolie, and I am not willing to get him right now. So, um, Yeah, JMK. There are some other cheesier squads that can possibly work. So like Supreme Leader Kylo with Daka, Zombie, Armor, Watt, that sort of cheese squad. You can kill him sometimes. Um, I tried uh, my characters with GBA in instead of Armor because I don't have Armor, and I could not beat him. Um, I do not have C, but C is also very dicey because the characters around him just die super quick. And then
Yeah,
it's like 5-on-1, and you better hope that you can get to your ultimate in time and kill the two damage dealers, or else you're gonna have a real bad time. So,
yeah,
anyways, all that to say, JMK is the strongest GL that is in the game right now because of the complement of characters that he can use, and Cat is a big part of that. Um, there are very
so
few
what's
ways to
what's
counter
like
what she
the
does.
what's the
So,
ideal squad that we're
so I
looking?
don't, so I don't want to prescribe an ideal squad because I think there are several that are work really, really well for Squad Arena. But I can tell you the one that I can't beat is JMK with GK with both Ahsokas and General Skywalker. That team it will melt your face off.
Yeah, it
Um,
sounds like
it
it.
will, and especially, I mean, my guildmate. So I recruited him to Mandalore a couple months ago, I think, because he was one of the higher performers in our shard. So I mean, obviously, he's in the same shard as I am, so he has a very similar GP level to me, and he has very good mods on that team. I'm fairly certain those are his best 5 mod sets that he's got on that team. So, um, yeah, if you want to not fall very far in Squad Arena and you have Commander Ahsoka Tano available, you don't need Cam for him to be a god. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, and
which
basically
is
same in GSC.
yeah, and the whole Cam thing, I think when people like saw him suggested as a synergy, everybody panic and run, and went
Yeah,
lickety split to any guild they could find that was breaking in Cam shards, and
yeah,
everybody suddenly took that mission a lot more seriously.
yeah.
Obviously there was competitive guilds that were doing that much earlier, but everybody else like, oh shit, I suppose we should pay attention to that mission. Um,
Yeah,
but like you said, I've kind of heard the same thing of like, you probably don't even need Cam to, not to say that Cam's a bad character. Go get Cam if you have the ability to, but um, I've kind of heard the same thing of the like, it's not necessarily mandatory to have a usable, very high performing um, Kenobi team. So which is good. I am glad because I know that was like a big concern for a lot of people of like, well, there aren't that many guilds that are, raking in tons and tons of cam shards. So that's the kind of the silver lining there, at least. And honestly, I know you and I have talked about this too. I was pretty floored that they didn't make him a requirement,
yes,
to be honest. So
same, same.
I guess good on CG for once. But they probably just realized that like, hey, if we're gonna release a GL, we need somebody to actually be able to get him. So let's not make a cam a requirement. We need people to spend money, and they're not going to spend money if they can't have cam. So I think that's probably the cynic in me tells me that's probably the more realistic reason why they didn't do that. But
So
they
one,
have all that data at their fingertips, so they can tell how many people have cam and how many don't.
yeah. One thing that I will definitely say about Cam, and this is again in relation to the upcoming changes uh, for some characters. And so not live in the game yet, but just keep this in mind when you are thinking, oh, phew, don't have to worry about Cam. Um, Gas is getting nerfed in Jedi teams in about a month, and he will he will no longer outperform Cam in this team as the damage dealer or one of the damage dealers. In fact, Cam, I think, will be a significant upgrade to him, even with Cat in the lineup. Um, so keep that in mind. I mean, definitely keep going for Cam in your guilds, especially if you're a leader and you're on the more competitive side. Cam is still going to be very important to this team in about a month when Gas gets nerfed. Gas is going to belong to the 501st after the changes go through. He's going to be more powerful on that team, and he's going to be much less powerful on a Jedi team. So just remember that.
We've talked about this a little bit. Well, I guess let's finish up with Kenobi, and then maybe we can talk about some of those character changes just at a high level. I know we're going to delve into that a little bit more probably, and probably with the roundtable with the boys in a bit. But once those changes actually hit the game and we can actually feel them. But for Kenobi, what are you hearing about him as far as and for Cat too, for this matter? How about on PVE? Is it a worthwhile? Generally speaking, from what I've seen so far, GLs are always going to be good for TB. But how do you feel about them for TB and then the raids and any other game modes that you can think where he's really standing out
Well,
from what you've heard so far, anyway?
yeah. So I mean, he's I'm a little salty about this particular topic because if I go back about 6 months, I was agonizing over who was my second GL going to be. I had already gotten Jedi Master Luke, and I'm thinking to myself, I want to continue down the path of getting good GLs that are interesting to me, with characters that I like from the movies, and that will also help me the most in PvP. But Kylo doesn't really fit any of those. But I went for
Sure.
him because he was the only way that I was going to be able to get a top 10 finish in a Sith raid. Because at the time he was the only GL, he was the only team that could solo the Sith raid. And I kept holding out hope. I kept thinking to myself, oh, maybe there will be another GL that's announced that can solo the Sith raid. But unfortunately, with the timing of my account, uh, I needed to pull the trigger much earlier than JMK. I mean, I've had SLKR for 4 or 5 months now. This is a long time ago now. So I was really holding out hope that there would be another GL release that could solo the Sith raid. And lo and behold, here is JMK with Commander Ahsoka Tano. This is exactly what I was looking for. It's just 5 months too late. So in answer to your question, yes, he is extremely good in PvE in the Sith raid. You'll see pictures of Kat doing an absurd amount of damage. It's mostly her, to be honest. But JMK can do it without her as well. It just takes longer. And you have to be a
Yeah.
little bit more finesse about it. Cat makes it easy mode. Um,
Zoro sent me this video that was like 37 minutes. I'm like,
yeah, yeah,
dude,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I hardly have time to listen to our own podcast sometimes for a week or
I
two. Like,
know.
you want me to watch a 37 minute? He's like, it doesn't matter. Just fast forward to the end of each phase where she just does ass loads of damage and kills the boss. I'm like, okay. Like, I can
Yep,
see your point.
yep, yep. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I will say, Lightside GOTB, he is very valuable in the fact that he is a Galactic Republic Jedi. So he trivializes the Dooku mission in P3, which has been
Wow.
the bane of my existence for the last few months because I've gotten 4 out of 4 on it one time, but it's almost a guaranteed 3 out of 4 because you get there with your whole squad there. You've even got gas in there under General Kenobi lead, and then you kill the other 4 characters, no problem. And then Dooku 1v5s your entire team. And there's nothing you can do about it because you can't debuff him more than one time. and he just solos everyone, and it's infuriating. So,
Is that the
fortunately,
one
James,
that's in the same? Is that in the cam zone? The other mission in the
it's
cam
it's
zone?
it's just above the cam zone.
Just above. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. It's in the middle slice.
Okay.
So, anyways, JMK now trivializes that if you have him. So that's great. He apparently also it makes the Nexu mission a lot easier, which makes sense.
Did see a headline about that. Yeah, that
Yeah.
he pretty well destroys Nexu.
Yep. But just to give you guys an idea of like Nexu's importance in the game, it's not really that important.
No.
Mandalore is 340 something million GP now, and we still don't get to the Nexu mission because we get better stars if we sandbag a zone. So
Yeah, yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, it's kind of like the shit. What the hell is the thing called? The recommission, right? Where it's just like extra get to essentially, right?
oh no, the recommission is you're talking about
Or
the
no,
Acklay
that's
mission. You're talking about the Acklay
Acklay. Yeah,
mission.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Sorry,
yeah.
sorry, not Reek.
I'm
Yep,
gonna
yep.
say the Reek mission is
I was
kind of
mixing up my
important, buddy.
monsters.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Acklay mission. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Yep. Okay. All right.
The one last thing that I'll say just really quick is that JMK, those are the things that he helps you do better. Apparently, he seems to be not as good at getting combat missions done as the other two light side GLs. So Rey
Okay.
and Jedi Knight Luke with Jedi Master Luke, those are your bread and butter GLs for combat missions. You can use JMK and he'll do just fine for you, but he seems to be not quite as good, at least without Commander Ahsoka. Maybe she will put him over the top. I'm not sure. But also, I mean, you kind of want her with a different team, I think, to elevate them, like with Padme or CLS or something like that. So
Yeah. Yeah. So he probably comes in handy when you have like, depending on how your guild paces through that
yeah,
TB. If you have a phase where you have a couple Jedi missions or a Galactic Republic and a Jedi mission at the same time, probably helps you flesh that out a little bit easier and get better chances out of 4 or 4s on both.
yep.
Is kind of what I was thinking. But okay, just real quick before we move on, do you know how he does in? Have you heard anything about C Pit with that? I'm assuming
Yeah,
he's. I
he
haven't heard
does
anything
well.
crazy, but
Yeah,
probably does well as the other meta squads, right?
yep. He even a little bit better than a lot of them. Like he's better than SLKR. I'll tell you that right now.
Okay,
Yeah,
nice.
SLKR really got hurt with the CPIT update. He doesn't do nearly as well as he used to. But
Yeah,
yeah, JMK probably doubles his damage in the mid phases, and he does
nice,
pretty well in P4 too with the right characters. So yeah, he's definitely a good addition.
nice. All right, perfect. Well, so we'll kind of shift into the road ahead here. We're going to focus on the new character releases, but I do want to kind of, since we've already touched on it a little bit, there are some upcoming changes to how a few of the big characters. Frankly, it's a lot of the non-GL GL counters is my perspective on it. But they're some of the big characters that are being used because of their defense penetration or their way to just do obscene amounts of damage. To things in very kind of basically burst damage. So we're seeing some character updates specifically to updates. The three main ones to me, and it really two of them are intertwined, right? So you have Vader and Watt that are, you know, kind of being one calling Blade is being dialed back to like 40%, if I remember correctly. I don't have it in front of me,
Yep,
but his
40%
calling
less.
Blade bonus damage is 40% less, which is crazy. He is getting a bump on the raid boss damage, if I remember correctly. So I'll be interested to see how that pans out with C-Pit. But
Uh,
intertwined with that, like I said, is Watt, where his ability takes away he had one that increased defense penetration, so it takes away that piece of it. I think it was it specifically on the blast tech, or
yes.
was it just on? Okay,
Yep.
so they'll still get the what is it, the speed and the damage boost, just not the defense penetration, correct?
They get yeah, the defensive penetration is all that they get removed. So they get the 15% TM every time an enemy moves, and they get
Yep.
the cannot be revived clause, they still get that. So it'll still be good for killing Night Sisters and bounty hunters and all those other annoying revive teams.
Yeah, so basically he just gets away, takes away Vader's ability to do stupid damage. And then Gas similarly, has a similar thing where they're removing his defense penetration, but replacing it essentially with when he stands back up, he has full protection, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they're getting that, and then he's also getting a buff where, so like currently when he's kneeling, he gets 10% of his protection back every time either an enemy or a clone takes a turn.
Right.
But they're increasing it to 20% protection whenever one of his clones takes a turn. So he's going to stand up even faster than he used to. And so you're almost definitely not going to be able to kill all 4 of his minions on the first topple. He's going to get more than 1 topple now. So that's going to make counters very interesting. He's going to be even better on defense in GAC. So I foresee bounty hunters becoming extremely important at top level play, because bounty hunters have the nice capability of outrunning him and disintegrating before he moves. So that'll just bypass all those new mechanics right there. So, anyways,
yeah, it's gonna make Sith Empire counter a little bit tougher. As somebody who runs that in an arena,
yes.
it's gonna be dicey. But you talked about bounty hunters, so that's an interesting segue into one of the big releases that's coming out.
Isn't it?
We're finally. It's almost like you planned that.
Almost like it, yeah.
Almost like it.
Let's pretend it was luck, though.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're more methodical than Han Solo. So, you do know the odds. You don't need to be told the odds. So basically we're finally getting a bounty hunter capital ship in the form of the Executor. So thematically, this makes sense. It was the ship that they were on within Empire Strikes Back when they're tracking down Han Solo and all that good stuff. So thematically, it makes sense. But obviously along with that, to get Executor, you have to have some bounty hunter ships, obviously. And let me just pull up the actual racks are right in front of me here. So as far as ships go, so I'll start with the easy. We'll ease into this, okay, Lab.
Okay.
We'll start with the ship racks. So Razor Crest at 5 stars, 7 stars to complete. So it sounds kind of like what they did with, if anybody who's listening to this that is, a few million GP plus, if you can remember back to the days when, we unlocked the original capital ships in the game, they would unlock, and then you would have to do different tiers of it. Once you would get your ships up to that star level, you could unlock the next one. At least that's how I'm interpreting this. It could be that they do it also like they did Finalizer and Radis. Not sure how you interpreted that, but I kind of interpreted it like the original releases where, it would, once you get your ships up to so many stars, you can unlock that, tier for the capital ship. Is that how you interpreted it as well?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
After they updated the section, I was very confused when they released this and it just said Razor Crest, 5 stars. Slave 1, 4 stars. I'm thinking to myself, are you guys serious? Like, you only are going to require 4 stars to unlock this capital ship? But now it makes sense. Like, yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like the other. It's just like the other ship releases, like Tarkin and Mace and Akbar way back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
where you could get them up to a certain point without having your ships, all the way to 7 stars. But to fully unlock it, you needed the 7 stars.
Yeah, and that's usually where the really, the tipping point abilities are with that last star. So
Yeah.
So we got Razor Crest, Slave 1, IG 2000, Houndstooth, TIE Advanced, TIE Bomber, and Imperial TIE Fighter. So Razor Crest, relatively new. Depending on how you've been doing with Conquest, you may or may not have them unlocked, and depending on whether you've gone Bando unlocked as well. That's really the choking point there. The other stuff is probably something that if you've been working on Empire Fleet, you probably have most of that stuff. If you have Millennium Falcon, you have those things as far as the bounty hunters go. Um, there's nothing crazy in there. And if you don't have any of that stuff, you're not wasting anything at all by getting that stuff.
That is
So
correct. Yeah.
these are all great ships. As
Well,
far
I mean,
as
Slave One
they're
sucks, but you need it anyways.
you need it, yeah, and like you need to get that anyway to get Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
So just go do that. And to be fair, it is a quick building ship when you're first starting out. Too, if you are a newer player, it's a great tank ship early on. So yeah, I mean, there's no crazy waste here, and if you are going to be building out a bounty hunter scoundrel fleet, you need all the bounty hunter ships in the game because there aren't a ton of them. So go and get that. Ships, nothing crazy here, right? The long pole in the tent is going to be that Razor Crest as far as 7 starring executor, because we just don't know after this last conquest. It's going to get rolled off the reward crates, and then it'll be rolled back into the game, reintroduced at some point down the line. So if you don't have enough to unlock it, which it unlocks at 5 stars. So if you don't have enough to unlock it at this point, unless they release in packs, you're kind of stuck until they reintroduce it. So just kind of hold tight on that piece. But the rest of the stuff, build it up because you're going to want that anyway, if you don't already have it built. Um, Now let's talk about the characters lab. And
Yes,
there's
let's.
no surprises in the characters. So we got Vader, we got Admiral Piet, we got Boba Fett, TIE Fighter pilot, Bosk, IG-88, and Dengar. The only one of those ones, well, there's 2 of them that aren't pilots in. No, yep, just one of them that's not a pilot for one of those ships, and that's Dengar. The other ones are pilots either for the ships that are required, or Piet is the capital ship pilot. So the other ones you need anyway, and they're good character. You need them for. You don't necessarily need all of them, but if you're doing Millennium Falcon and Chewie, kind of makes sense to build all of them. Dengar nowadays you could probably do without to do that event, just because Grief is in the game and a few other things that have been introduced. But let's talk about the relics here. And again, we're not talking about GL. We're not talking about a GL here, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about, excuse my language, but a fucking capital ship here. Relic 7 Darth Vader, no big deal. Not a waste. Probably have it anyway if you're a high-end player. Admiral Piet at Relic 8. Boba Fett, Relic 8. TIE Fighter Pilot, Relic 5. Bosk, Relic 5. IG-88, Relic 5. Dengar, fucking Relic 5.
All right, hang on, Mangry.
This is crazy
Before
shit.
you say anything else, I need to ask you, which one of those requirements annoys you the most? Just pick one.
Just one?
Yep,
Just
only
one?
one. Which one annoys you the most?
I mean, probably Boba Fett at Relic 8,
Okay.
honestly. But, like, so it's kind of a tie between that and Dengar at Relic 5. Although he's probably a monster, probably really hard to kill, at that level.
Yeah.
But TIE
I
Fighter
mean,
pilot, there's a lot in here that I don't like. That I would never take most of this to high Relic, even if I took it to Relic. But
all right.
how about you? Which one
So you,
annoys you the most?
all right. So I'll tell you which one annoys me the most, and then there'll be an honorable mention since you mentioned a couple. The one that annoys me the most is TIE Fighter pilot, and here's why.
Yeah, that's fair.
He's not a terrible character. Like, you can get some use out of him, although I probably won't get that much use out of him. But the reason that it annoys me to no end that he's up there is because fleets are plagued with stupid RNG already. Like, RNG will completely swing the battle from sure win to sure loss with just one dodge. Okay. One of those 2% dodges. Now you
It's
got
not
Relic
dodges.
5 TIE Fighter pilot in the mix. Everybody's going to have him. I'm going to start seeing this idiot in GAC all the time, and I'm going to have to start dealing with, is he going to dodge? Is he not going to dodge? Is he going to give the enemy capital ship turn meter and F me over before I can get to my
Yeah, he's
ultimate?
gonna be doing barrel rolls, homie. He's
Who
just gonna be spinning.
knows? It's up to a roll of the dice. GAC fleets are fun. So, anyways, that's the one that annoys me the most. I really wish that I wasn't going to see
Sounds
him
like it
in.
annoys you the most though, because you don't look forward to facing that
I
more than
don't.
like it would annoy you to actually relic that.
No, I'm gonna relic him and I'm gonna enjoy putting him on defense and giving my opponents headaches, but I'm gonna have to live those same headaches myself on the other side of the
Yeah,
board.
fair.
So,
I
anyways,
like it. It's a
hopefully,
holistic headache.
yes, it is. It is. Headache for everybody. Thanks, CG. Thanks for a great fleet mode. Um, so anyways, honorable mention for which one annoys me the most is Admiral Piet, because nobody, and I mean nobody, needed this idiot at Relic 8. Okay? What's he gonna do?
Yeah.
Is he's gonna stack Emperor's Trap harder than he does already? Like there's nothing useful about putting him to Relic 8. Nobody was gonna do this. And I'm sure that's why they did it, right? Um,
Yeah.
very, very irritating on the squad front because Piet's whole thing, like the trooper's whole thing is you get out in front of the enemy never takes a turn, they all die, and you get 60 banners. Like that's how troopers work. So it doesn't
Yeah.
matter if Piet is
You
at
just
relic
need to outrun.
3, relic 5, relic 8, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways,
The,
that's my
the
rant.
only piece about that, like his capital ship will be going that much faster. Is
Right.
kind of how I saw that too.
Yeah,
But
everybody's will be.
yeah, that's fair. That's fair too because it's a
More
requirement.
coin flips.
Yeah,
Yay.
true. Yeah, that's true. Didn't think about that. Yeah, it's a. I just take massive issue with this because then like you're really pushing people to decide, hey, do you want to relic stuff for a capital ship,
Yep.
or do you want to take those same relic mats thrown towards characters for a GL?
Yep. That's
That
exactly what
seems
it
like a
is.
silly choice, and most people. So it's going to kind of come in two waves. So you're going to get people that are going to make the choice to get this because presumably, um, you know, this is going to do, this ship it better be at this relic cost, but presumably it's going to be a meta breaker and going to mix up, kind of the top end fleets of you're now not going to just see solid, malevolence and negotiators for the most part at the top of the fleet chart. You're going to start seeing executors too. And if they don't, then CG fucked up big time by making these requirements. But that it, it's there's going to be players that are going to make that choice because that's their crystal income, right? Because 400 crystals a day is a lot easier in fleet shards for a lot of people, a lot easier to manage than it is on the squad arena side of things. So
And
there are people that are going to make that choice, but it's still going to be a tough pill to swallow at that relic cost.
it's
And I'm
not
sure,
it's not just the 400 crystals, by the way, although that is definitely a significant part of it. But if this is truly the meta breaker that we all want and need it to be,
Mhm.
because we've had negotiator mirrors for 2 years now, and it's just time to move on. But
Yep,
if
agreed.
if it, if this is the meta breaker that it has to be because of the requirements and because of the time frame, then you're going to need this in territory wars and GAC too. Like this is not going to be optional. If you don't get
Yeah.
this, you're going to lose a bunch of your PvP stuff. So I've it's funny because more than I've had a lot more people DM me these last 2 days than I expected, asking this very question. Do I go for the new ship or do I go for Vader?
Yeah.
Or do I go for the new ship or do I go for X Galactic Legend? And I got to be honest with you. It's well, let me just put this caveat out there. It is not a blanket 100%
No,
go
it's
one way
not.
or the other. It is definitely
Yep.
roster dependent. But
Yep.
with that said, I think you're going to need this ship if you're thinking competitively at all. You're going to need this ship. And you're
Yeah.
probably and by the way, This isn't going to be a surprise to anybody, but let me just say it anyway, get it on the record. I am about 98.6% sure that this ship is going to
Very
be
precise.
required to get Lord Vader.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I
Probably,
mean, I see
probably not
this as
7
going to
stars,
be,
but yeah.
yeah. I feel like it'll probably be, kind of like they did with Finalizer and Radis, where
Yep.
it'll be like you got to unlock it,
Yep.
to go and get it. So this is going to be, and who knows? So I guess I'll throw this out here too while we're talking about Lord Vader. As far as they released the first group of requirements for him, as well as a sneak peek at group three. So group one is basically Hunter, Tech, and Wrecker, and Tusken Raider, all at Relic 5, Padme, Relic 8. The sneak peek at group three is Gas. So already out of the gate, we know Tusken Raider is going to be the wasted tune that nobody wants to, but thematically, makes sense. His relationship with the Tuskens and Tatooine and everything. The other stuff, not at all wasted. Go get that stuff anyway. Sure, Relic 8 may not be top of the list for Padme, but she's probably going to be damn hard to kill, I would assume, at that. And then, I don't have hands on with the Bad Batch clones yet, but, that they're looking pretty dope. So
They are
I
very
think they're
solid.
they're going to be good for a lot of things probably, but namely they'll probably be pretty good for the cam mission. So Relic 5 isn't a waste there either. But where I'm going with this is that for all we know, some of these character requirements for Executor could be shared character requirements for Lord Vader. We have seen that with JKL and JML, for example. So they could be some crossover there for all we know. But if there's not, it basically will likely mean, because I agree with you, that Lord Vader, will need all of his 10 to 13 requirements or whatever, plus these tunes, because you got to get the ship too. So we'll see. We'll see. But this is rough. And by the way, they did also really, announce in the road ahead that Relic 9 is coming. I think they said in August. I don't know if it said it in the forum post, but I think they said it in the video. So there's still a question mark out there on Relic 8 of how they're going to handle that, if they're going to keep it the same, and how they're also going to release Relic 9. Are they going to introduce new materials for that, or are they going to make it the same as 8, just more materials? We don't know for sure yet, unless I missed something in the post. So if they're going to keep on building that stuff up, and we'll talk about this a bit more, probably in a future episode on, we'll loop in a few more opinions than just Lab and I, but for all we know, they could be rolling out more mechanisms to get Relic 8, or, we're not really sure how they're going to release Relic 9 yet. So if things are the way they are now, this sucks big time. And even if they're not the way they are now, it's still going to be a lot of gear. Even if you throw Relic, the fact that Relic 8 materials is behind C-Pit or the last two crates in Conquest, or buying them, even if you throw that fact out the window, it's still a lot of gear that you have to sacrifice at the scavenger to get all that stuff to get up to that high relic tier. So this is rough for a ship, in my opinion. So this is not something that new players are going to be able to easily access, particularly if they're free to play. So yeah, it's going to be tough. I am excited by the fact that they are releasing a bounty hunter capital ship or scoundrel ship. I think the writing was on the wall with that when they released Razor Crest. It is a little bit disappointing because now Chimera, which is where, kind of the default option for running those ships under. I do that myself in GAC. Sometimes I get two fleets both on defense a lot of times, and then I'll roll Rebels and then Chimera with bounty hunters. I mix it up. Sometimes I go Empire with Houndstooth, or sometimes I go a miscellaneous Chimera fleet with Houndstooth, and then if that and Bounty Hunters, and then if I need to clean it up, I'll take in an Empire fleet or some other ships. But it kind of leaves Chimera in the dark, doesn't it? Again, like Chimera continues to just be the home for misfit toys. It seems like to me. Is that your impression as well?
Yeah, I mean, the issue with fleet, well, I shouldn't say the issue. There's plenty of issues with fleets, but one of the big issues with fleets is that we simply don't have enough regular ships to go with all the capital ships that we have. And another
Exactly.
capital ship release here is just going to exacerbate that issue. And so you're
Yeah.
gonna have, I mean, Mace has nothing right now, and Thrawn is looking like he's gonna kind of inch over to that corner as well. And maybe
Yeah.
they'll obviously Thrawn can be your Empire leader if you want him to be, and he and Tarkin
Yep.
both do that reasonably well. There's at least an argument to be made for each one. Um, So I, I
Yep.
I wouldn't I wouldn't put Thrawn in the Mace category,
Well,
but
he's also a useful character on his own, whereas
oh
Mace.
well, yeah, for now he is. Just kidding. Yeah, he's one
Well,
of the
yeah,
he's one
yeah,
of the characters that's getting nerfed, so that's why I say that. But yes, he is a useful character for sure, and you need him
yeah,
for C at Relic 6. So I mean, most people are going to have that capital ship and and its pilot very well geared. So I mean, he's good in a pinch. You can put some garbage under him, and if it survives long enough, he can get to his ult and kill something. But yeah, he doesn't seem like he's going to have a home in Division 1 fleet meta for very much longer. That's for sure.
yeah. And that was like so. The other piece of the road ahead too was that Maul, like we've already kind of talked about, was the is gonna be the next Conquest release, similar to Commander Ahsoka Tano. So the next three conquests, we can expect to see him be the primary reward, or shard reward anyway, out of the reward boxes. So I think everybody's excited about this.
I'm super excited
I
for him.
Yeah, same here. And basically what their reasoning was is that they I watched the video. They kind of did the road ahead a little bit different format this time. They did like a video and then forum post, but the video got into a little bit more context and a little bit extra verbiage in there as far as why they made some of these decisions. But they basically acknowledge the fact that everybody wants a more powerful mall, and that this mall is basically is meant to represent the last season of Clone Wars, the mall that that we see in you know at least as far as the non-movie lightsaber duels, him and Snips getting into it, in the last season. That's the version of Maul that they're trying to do. So mechanical legs and everything. We're finally getting that Maul, which is really cool to see. I think everybody is excited about that thematically, and also the fact that just the base Maul, the original Maul in the game, is
So garbage.
shit.
So
It's
garbage.
so trash
Mace
that
level garbage.
yeah, him and Mace really got it
He's
hard.
Actually,
They
Maul is
just
slightly better just because his leadership doesn't completely blow. But yeah, he's
That's true.
definitely
That's
he's
true.
definitely in that category.
I've been known to clean up a couple GAC boards with a Mace lead here and there, but I'm not ashamed to admit that. You do what you got to do at the end, and when you got no good Jedi leaders and you got a couple good Jedis in there, throw Mace in there, see what happens. Um,
So dumb.
but I think everybody is excited to see that. I was kind of expecting, if not wanting them to do another ship and just alternate ship character, for the exact reason that you just mentioned, is that we don't. It would be great to see a tank for resistance, a tank for first order. It would be great to see, a number of different ships in there, because if you're at the level where you're setting a couple fleets on defense and GAC, and then that means you also have to have at least two fleets to attack with, if not another one to, kind of clean up in case you need it. But we have all these other capital ships that you run out, like, if you have a match, and I've done this, where, like, I have a really tough one. They didn't set what I expected them to on GAC defense, and I had to fight. That last fleet just stopped me, and I had two battles, maybe three battles into it, and I couldn't do anything else. I had capital ships left, but I had either no ships at all, or trash, level one ships, Sith fighter, or whatever left, there's just nothing to throw at it, and it's disappointing because, like you said, we have all these capital ships, but not enough ships to support it. So hopefully we see something, coming out in the future, at least with like pilotless ships, or something along those lines to alleviate that a bit. So that's about where I'm at. So Lord Vader, like I said, we kind of went through those. We don't, at least not as far as I saw, I don't think they really talked about what his kit is going to be like, really. Unless I missed something. Did you hear anything else about that, Lab? Or I know they did the main post. I'm not sure if I missed any of the side posts or anything else from the devs on Vader or Executor.
No, I mean the main post is and the video, that's all the relevant information that we have, other than them posting like one or two other times on the forum saying that they're reading all the comments and taking community sentiment into consideration. Um,
Which means
I
they're not going to change anything.
uh yeah, I mean,
They're going to
I
march ahead as intended.
well, and can you blame them? I mean,
No.
I'm quite sure that they didn't take these changes lightly and they knew what the reaction was going to be. Like they're not
Yeah.
stupid. They they've run a very successful, very engaging game for 5 years now. They know what the deal is. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm quite sure that they fully intend to go full speed ahead with the changes. They would not have announced these changes if they did not otherwise intend to do so. I do think that the community backlash is, uh, I don't want to say unwarranted, but the vitriol and the, uh, shall we say, the intensity of the responses, um, I think the community is going to be wrong on this one when we look back in a year. Um, I largely trust CG. And CG is dead on when they say that defense ignore was limiting design space. They are 100% correct about that. And so changing up these other characters in order to allow for more design space for characters like Commander Ahsoka Tano and presumably Maul and whatever other fun characters they have, in store for us. Um, I am definitely on board with that. Uh,
Same. Yeah, and I agree with that. I get people's perspectives of, taking away GL counters. Honestly, I think a lot of it we're gonna have to wait and see how it actually feels, and how hard these characters are gonna hit, with these changes in mind. And we will do, a roundtable when these changes hit, and shortly thereafter anyway, to get, like we said, more than just our two opinions, but also when we can actually get our hands on it and see how it feels. I appreciate the fact that they didn't just blanket nerf and not do anything else. They did a nerf, and then they made a meaningful change to just adjust how you use that character, or at least focus. Like a gas, for example. It's just focusing how you use that character. They really want you using them with 5.0 first. So, I think that there's still merit to that, because I think you and I have both played video games before, mobile or otherwise, where nerfs are not as thoughtfully put through, and are just like blanked, like, yeah, this character now does 50% less damage or some shit like that. This is like even Vader, who did get a massive nerf to his calling blade damage, got a buff in other places, against like raid bosses, and we'll see how that feels, But like I feel like it's at least giving them, like you said, the design space that they need, but it also shows that they're capable of making some adjustments. And if they make tweaks down the line, that's a good thing. You don't want too many in a game like this because it is a long haul game. It takes a long time to build, a high end squad and get it relevant for, relic levels or high end gear levels, if you're at that level. So it takes a while to build a true squad in this game. So you don't want to make tweaks like that too often. But it is good to make sure that they can make adjustments so that way they can account for power creep or characters that are just outperforming what they intended it to do. So it does seem like there was a lot of thought that went into it. I agree with you. Um, we'll see
Let me
how.
make one more comment about this
Sure.
particular topic. And everyone who's listening to this, if you're super angry about these changes, I need you to listen to me right now, okay? This is something that
Look
I
Lab in
haven't
the eye,
heard.
look him in the eye, and
Look at him.
listen to
Yes,
his
eye
words.
contact. I demand eye contact. All right. Look, this is something that I haven't heard anybody else say yet. But I think this is one of the super relevant points that everybody is missing. The fact that CG is willing to make a broad, like a widespread change, like they are making, like they just announced, and willing to take this giant community backlash that they knew was coming in order to take a direction in the game to make it better down the line, it shows that they care and that they want the game to succeed a long time into the future. This
Yeah.
is super important, okay? The last thing that we want as a community is for CG to say, whatever, fuck it. We already made the characters like that. We're just going to keep making more and more broken, novel type kits on our new releases. And eventually the game will just like implode
Yeah.
on the backs of stupid kits and poorly designed uh, characters and overpowered power creep, etc. Okay? So I
Yeah.
know that these changes are super like irritating to a lot of people, including very good players who have spent a long time developing off-meta counters to GLs. And and I get that, and I don't want to diminish or minimize that point because that definitely stings. That definitely hurts. But realize that CG caring enough to rebalance the game for future content tells me that they have plans, that they care about the game, they want the game to be successful for a long time going forward. And that to me is the most important thing. More important than anything else. More important than, Lord Vader didn't win a successful fight in his entire one day before he got his hands chopped off. Like, that's a stupid GL in my mind. Like, I hate the fact that he's
Dude,
going to be a GL.
dude,
But
like you even saw me, I think, I even admitted, I'm like, I was 100% wrong. I'm gonna eat my words right now because I thought the community, there's a section of the community, I'll say, that has always wanted Fallen Anakin in the game,
stupid.
and now they're getting it. I never thought they were gonna get it.
Yeah,
Never in a
I didn't
million
either.
years did I think that was gonna happen.
The
But
Youngling Slayer
here we are.
3000 is coming to the game next month. Congratulations, guys. The only
They're
people
putting a
that
child
he
murderer in the
Yeah,
game.
that's right. The only opponents that he was able to defeat in his short career as Lord Vader were younglings and unarmed separatist leaders that trusted him. Good job. Like what a powerful guy. Anyways,
Uh,
that's the
War
short.
criminal.
Yeah, that's right, a war criminal. Oh, and he force choked his wife too. That was cool too. What a great guy.
Mm, Forced her
Anyways,
into early labor.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh God. So anyways, back to the point that I'll just wrap up is that there are things in this game that super duper annoy me, but I don't really care about them that much because I know that the game overall is A, super fun, B, seems to be super healthy, C, I'm going to be able to enjoy it for years to come, and I don't even have to spend money to enjoy it. Like, and that's not, that's not a shot at anybody else who does spend money, because I am super glad that you do that. And if that brings you enjoyment and you can afford it, please, by all means, continue to do that. But this game has brought me so much joy and entertainment over the last few years, and I would hate to see it collapse on it under its own weight. And this is CG preventing, like doing what they think is needed to do to prevent that. And so I'm super happy that they are willing to take all of this criticism and this vitriol in order to do what very clearly needs to be done.
Well, yeah, and they've taken vitriol and criticism with less optimism involved too. Like when they released Relics to begin with, for example, there was none of this. Like in here, they're saying, "Hey, here's another GL. Here's Relic level 9. This is gonna piss you off real good. And hey, oh, here's the cherry on top. This part's gonna piss you off big time. We're gonna make you Relic a bunch of shit to get a capital ship. Now that you're good and pissed off, let us tell you about these other characters that we're gonna nerf. We're gonna adjust their kits. We're gonna make them." But I do agree with you. Had they just left all of that off and just said, let it fall where it falls, what's the motivation for anybody to chase the next, big thing if they know that, like, okay, I'm just gonna have to keep on chasing relic levels here and it's just gonna be an endless battle. I'm just gonna give up on this game. Whereas if they show one that they're willing to knock down stupid kits, like you said, to realistic levels and still give them, not totally neuter them to the point where they're Mace Windu in this game. They're still making that character useful. It still has very much use. It's just maybe not in the ways that people were using them to manipulate things, to do stupid shit in the game. So now they're just kind of bringing it back down to reality, and showing that they can do that and that they may do that again in the future if shit gets out of hand. So, like you said, if it wasn't for that, it would just look like a massive cash grab, because they were saying, we're going to keep on pumping relics at you. You're going to have to buy more shit or grind longer for more shit. And eventually people would just give up. But if they show that they're willing to keep shit in check and make it worth your while to get that stuff at those higher relic levels, then okay, I'll get it. So I agree with you. I think that they're going to take some heat. Some of it's warranted. Some of it is, just frustrations over characters building certain things to, and work it into their roster a certain way. And like you said, that's a valid frustration. But, I think for the health of the game in the long term, I agree with you. It does show that, despite the fact that the game's not being developed at like a high number of staff members or anything like that, they do care about it and they're willing to maintain that going forward, and that the health of that ecosystem. And I think they're, obviously the cynicism there is that they realize that if they don't do that, the game's going to die and they're going to lose that revenue stream,
Of course.
for a small development team. So they're probably making, if you're talking resources dedicated to a game versus money that it hauls in,
Oh my
this is not
goodness.
the biggest game that EA has, as far as revenue streams. But if you look at it with the amount of people that are actually making this game compared to how
Yeah.
much it makes,
The
it's crazy
overheads,
ratio.
the overhead is
Crazy
tiny
ratio.
compared to what they pull in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Insane.
Yeah. I haven't looked at the investor reports or anything like that, and I'm not sure how much detail they go into on that. But I'd be interested to see that that revenue ratio compared to some of their other titles. But yeah, so I mean, I think it's rough, some of those relic requirements, but they're at least showing that they care about the game and that they care about its overall health going forward. So we'll see. We'll see how it feels, and like I said, I think we'll follow up with another episode after all these changes have hit, and at that point we should have another group or two of Lord Vader requirements. I'm, like I said, hoping to see some synergies there between the characters that are needed for Executor and Vader. Thematically, that may not make sense, right? Those bounty hunters weren't chasing down Lord Vader or anything like that, but they do, obviously work for him in the future. So, we'll see, but we'll see where the cards fall. But we'll follow up with another roundtable on that. Any closing thoughts for you, Lad, before we wrap this up? I know this one's run a little bit long, but
It
hey, I
has.
mean, it's been a while since you and
It
I have
has.
chatted one-on-one, so
Indeed.
we need a little
Indeed.
extra time.
Yep. So I do have one more thing that I wanted to make sure that I covered real quick before we end. And this
Mhm.
is just my own opinion. This is my advice that I'm going to give to you free of charge. And I admit that this could end up being wrong, but the way that I see it, for any of you who are considering getting a GL, um, a newly released GL, either JMK or Lord Vader, and I'm specifically talking to those of you who are resource strapped. So you don't spend a whole lot of money. You're not in Division One with almost all the requirements already, farmed up and geared at least partially. You would have to start mostly from scratch. Maybe you have a small horde or even a big horde, and you're wondering what you're going to unleash it on. So here's my advice to you. If you look at the requirements in terms of gear already for Lord Vader, it's actually insane. There's no way they might even keep up that pace if they continue to require things like Echo and Omega, which they very well might. And in
Yeah,
addition, they're probably requiring at least 4-star Executor to round out his requirements. I would be
that's gonna
surprised
be
if they
the
didn't.
tipping point, I think. Yeah.
So just tack on all of those extra, pieces of gear and relics to his requirements. Um, if you're not sure, if you're trying to think about which of the new GLs is a more efficient path to take, I urge you to choose Kenobi, and here's why. A, um, he is part of the newest released set of GLs. His power level will be on par with Lord Vader. He may have different strengths or weaknesses, but in terms of squad arena, in terms of GAC, PvP, TW, he's going to be on par with Lord Vader. That's just how they've done things in the past. That's how it's going to be. The other thing is that those Bad Batch requirements, it's so many Chirotech. It's an insane amount of Chirotech. Okay. If you are
That's
not an
that's
end
true
game,
for any newly released character. By the way,
but
Fando,
it's
not
yes,
fun,
it's true.
not
It's
fun.
true. It's true. Um, and so that's another reason why JMK is the more efficient choice, in my opinion, is
Agree.
because
There's a lot more old school
so
characters in there for sure.
yeah, they're older characters. They don't require so much Chirotech. You're going to be able to get to him a lot faster, and you're going to be able to start on your next thing, which should be Executor, in my opinion. If you're thinking about one of the two new GLs, you should be thinking about Executor because that ship is almost certainly going to be meta, and you're going to need it
Yep.
to continue your fleet arena and your PvP stuff. So I would urge you. I mean, I understand, and again, this is a game, and if you really don't like Kenobi and you really like Lord Vader, or if you're a dark side enthusiast or whatever, I mean, follow your heart, okay? But if you're looking at this from an efficiency standpoint, I I I don't see a world in which JMK is going to be a better choice than Lord Vader in terms of an initial GL, because it'll allow you to start your Executor farm so much sooner.
I agree, and I think that the squad synergy in building the Rex for those two characters is strong because if you're building those relic bounty hunters to get executor, you're building a relic Django Fett. You have Bo Katan in the mix. You have a
Exactly.
Bando. You have these characters to build out, a variety of different squads depending on how you configure it. But you have a lot of strong options for bounty hunters, scoundrels, and Mandalorians. If you throw in a couple extra bonus tunes, and honestly, I do appreciate the fact that like those squads can shine a bit because I do feel like they're kind of, and maybe this is personal bias, but those are squads that like kind of sit in my roster. I'm like, I would just love to be able to get more utility out of these besides just pilots and out of like just a throwaway defense team or cleanup team or something like that in GAC. Now, maybe we have some options there. Hopefully, you also got to think about we have Book of Boba, the show coming out in the holiday season. So presumably we're going to see a Fennec eventually. We're probably going to see another Boba Fett. We're probably going to see some other bounty hunters and stuff like that in the mix, and or scoundrels. So there's going to be options for you, both now and in the future. And it genuinely would surprise me if they don't eventually release one or two GLs that are scoundrels instead of just making them all force wielders. Because I think they're very much within the universe, given their space to shine. Maybe I'll be proven wrong on that piece, but I think at least you can expect with the show coming out, there's going to be some more releases. Fennec's already been in 2 shows. She's going to be in Boba Fett's show as well. So, I mean, it's not wasted stuff to chase that fleet. And I think there's synergies with building towards Kenobi as well mixed in there. So I agree. I think that's kind of the move. A combo of those two or one of those two, and you address the other one later.
All right.
All right. Yeah. So I think that probably wraps up our episode. That ran longer than normal, but it is what it is. We had a lot to cover, and it's been a bit. So I do appreciate you guys listening. Hopefully we'll be releasing some stuff a little bit more frequently. Hopefully life will settle down a bit, and hopefully we'll get some new good content to cover for y'all. So until next time, do appreciate the listen, and we'll catch you guys next time. Peace out, Lab.
Peace.
Good talking to you, bud. I'll catch you
Likewise.
later, all right?
Catch you later.